Okay, I want to make a calendar debugging guide for things like conversational booking, things that you can go down on order of triage to make sure everything is set up correctly and working so that you can get your conversational booking works in case you're having an issue with it or cadence around it is off. And so, as you go on your AI deployment, I want to arm you with the best tools I can so that if you're actively doing build outs, if you're actively selling this as a service, you're smart to be able to go out and help clients with things like this. And then also, if you run into this issue, you know the triage steps to solve it, just making you that much more quicker, making you that much better in AI deployment. So I put together this cheesy reference here of the triage order of calendars. And it's the cheesy word is Casper, right? And this walks down all the triage steps for checking conversational booking. And so the C would be your calendar, making sure the assistant has access to it and a specific calendar to reference for conversational booking. A is going to be ability. So these will be the tool calls associated with the ability to actually do the things that, it's conversational booking, right? Like getting the availability and booking the appointment. Settings. Settings is a big thing sometimes when people are having trouble booking or not able to get times. Usually comes down to either a calendar setting or they'll have their Google Calendar integrated with their GoHighLevel calendar. They block off the times on their Google Calendar, and that blocks off their GoHighLevel calendar. So we want to check our settings, and we want to check all the stuff, with our GoHighLevel calendar to make sure that we actually can book the appointment. The probably the biggest thing I've seen, like 90% of use cases, triage calendar booking tends to be prompt, right? And I'll show you. We'll start this off with a blank slate of calendar booking with zero prompt, and I'll show you how it'll run through those steps. And then 90% of the use cases is instructions around booking, or we have really really long prompts that may be confusing to the AI that may reference things about dates and times and bookings that'll confuse it, and so then we get this weird output, right? Because the assistant's just kind of going off of what you told it. So how to check prompting and how to kind of you know use how to prompt that out, right? And then event. So did the tool actually get called for checking the availability, and did the tool actually get called for booking the appointment? Every time a tool is called, we show it in the logs along with all the metadata associated. So when it goes and gets its time, you're able to see when it does that, and you're able to see exactly what the assistant sees. You're able to see all the times that it gets, and then even on booking, you're able to see the response from GoHighLevel, whether it's the appointment is actually booked or if there's an error associated with it, such as unauthorized time zone, whatever. And then last, kind of going through everything else. If everything else is great, just refreshing the connection, a fresh OAuth reset, refreshing the calendar, refreshing the tools could make a lot of the difference. So it's kind of cheesy, but those are really kind of the 6 things to kind of go down on calendar booking. Now I'm going to go into the sub account with a blank assistant with like zero prompting, and I'm going to show you when all these things are kind of put together what it looks like conversationally with no instruction, what it's going to do so that you can see at a blank slate what we're working with, right? So let me go into the sub account real quick. Okay, so I just have a test page here with a chat widget, and then I just have an active tag on the contact that's in the chat widget. And so this assistant specifically, we can see in the logs here, what we're going to be using is this call center one to actually like do the response generation on this. And what this one will be is you're an appointment booking bot. That's like the entire prompt, right? Just so we can see with no further instruction what it can do on its own. And then I have the access to check availability, book appointment, and then just a testing calendar here. And the reason I wanted to do this was just to kind of like show you from a blank slate with no instruction, like what happens if everything is connected correctly with no instruction, what it should look like. And then that way we can work our way backwards when we get to prompt, right? So let me change out the active tag and then we'll start this conversation. Okay, so I've switched out the active tag on this contact. This one we'll be working with again, kind of setting the playing field like completely blank slate here on both the assistant and the contact level. And so we'll say, I would like to book an appointment. And we'll be conversing with this one right here. And so you'll see that come into the logs here, call center. And so let's see what it does with zero prompting. So we say, okay, we're going to check our available times, which we have this task perform, right? This action, or we can see that it got the calendar availability. And then it says, I have a time slot available tomorrow, alternatively, yada, 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 right? And so let's go ahead and just do this 4:31. And this is just kind of to show you, like, this is zero prompt on this assistant. This is just the prompt you are a booking assistant, and then the tool calls associated with booking the appointment, right? So here is what a blank slate appointment booking looks like. Very accurate, right? And this is to the point of, like, majority of the use cases I see on things like booking tend to come from prompt, because all else fails, we take the prompt away, right? The cadence of this is perfect, absolutely perfect. The AI kind of understands what it needs to be doing. It understands the order in which it needs to be doing, and then we get successful bookings. And so I wanted to show this to kind of say, here's what it's supposed to look like. You have zero prompt in there, and how much prompt can affect it later on when we do a little bit of testing. So let's go ahead and work our triage order here of calendar, right? So say we're not able to book an appointment. We're not able to replicate this, right? Even when we don't have a blank assistant. So the first step is making sure we have a calendar. And a good spot to kind of see this is if we see a tool called, right, this task performed to get availability, and this is empty, or there's nothing associated with it, right? So that means it went to go get availability, and there may not be a calendar, and or you may not have availability, but we're going to check our calendar first. So I do have my calendar here. You'll notice it here under the drop down for calendar. If this is empty, you need to add a calendar, sync your high level calendars. So if I just take these off here, you'll sync your high level calendars here. They'll begin to populate. And then with those populating, you can go in here and then test them to add them into high level. So we'll go ahead and do that here. I think I'll just use one of these calendars maybe. And so what you'll do is you'll add it to the assistant. It's not verified, so we'll ask you to verify it first because this kind of goes through orders of triage for you. And so it's going to get the raw availability from the calendar. And then when we book to confirm, what it's going to do is, book. It's going to create a contact, book with it using AI, kind of running a simulation in the background just to make sure that everything is good. And then we're all good here, verified. And then we would just, quote unquote, add this calendar here. So as long as our calendar is verified, we've synced our calendar is verified, and we've added it there, we at least know the calendar exists, the booking simulation has worked, so theoretically there's been a conversational booking that's worked to get this thing on here, and then we've added it to our assistant, and we're able to see it under the calendar tabs there. And next is ability. So even though we have a calendar here, right, being able to have the tools to be able to check the calendar and do things with the calendar, right? That's what our infrastructure is very strong on, is tool calling and the ability to use tools to make your AI scalable. And so just because we have a calendar here doesn't mean we can do anything, right? Say I have an employee and I hand them, my calendar, and then I don't give them the ability to reach it. I put it up on the ceiling and I'm like, book me an appointment. They're not able to open it up and check, the availability. And even if they were, they don't know where to, actually book it to, right? They just see that there is a calendar, but no ability to do anything about it. And so that's where we'll come into the tools here. And this is the A under ability. Does the assistant have the ability to do it? Now, if you have the ability, you'll see check availability and book appointment. Those are two pre-built tools for you. All you have to do is add them to the assistant and you're good to go. If you do not see these here, you'll add a function and they'll be the first two under pre-built tools. You just add them here, right? Add to assistant, add to assistant. And now all 5 of these are relevant to, full calendar management, like checking current appointments, canceling appointments, rescheduling appointments, plus conversational booking. But just for this case of booking, we just need these 2. The ability to take this calendar and check it. And then once we have checked it and conversed about it, booking to it. That's all we need. that's ability. So if we have our calendar, we have our tools associated, we're almost halfway done. Now, the other thing that I see when it comes to like, conversational booking, maybe having trouble, etc., is GoHighLevel calendar settings, because that's a whole nother layer on top of this, right? So not only do we have the conversational booking going on, but HighLevel has a full calendar infrastructure that has interesting settings, connections and things like that. So we need to go in there and check that. Okay, so if we go into, so we have this tab of HighLevel open here. Let me go into calendars. All right. And I'll go into here. So you'll see all of your calendars that you have associated with your account here. And what we'll do is the one that we're testing is a testing calendar, but whichever calendar you're trying to book to, that's what we'll check. And we'll check a couple settings here. So the first thing I always like to do, because even if you had verified your calendar in the past, if you done some work in your calendar, you connected it to different things, you want to make sure that you actually have availability. And by the way, for this test, I'm using round robin. But event, personal, they all kind of work the same way. But what I always like to do is I like to go here and then share. And then if you grab this permanent link here and you just open it up in another tab, this is like your calendar's objective availability. So like all else fails, this is like what is truly available to someone to be able to book on, right? So this is what our AI should be able to see in a real meaningful way. Now, if you go here and it's blocked off or it doesn't match what your availability should be, this could be a couple things. This could be like enabling look busy. This could be a Google Calendar integration. Again, blocking off times on the Google Calendar will also block off times in the HighLevel calendar, right? And there's even some settings where you can block so many days in advance, etc., for booking. Now, now that I've come here and I see that we have the availability there, let's just dig a little deeper into our settings here. Nothing you really need to worry about in here, but availability is a big thing. And so you have things like your weekly available hours here. You have things like look busy. You have things like date ranges and then maximum bookings per day, etc. These are all things that may affect it. And I'm not going to go through every single one of them to say like it could be this or this, but just make sure that your availability is open to book an appointment, right? You have adequate date ranges to be able to book an appointment, so you're not like, making your calendar 60 days out or anything like that. And then making sure that you have settings to tangibly be able to book to, right? And so I would just do a quick audit, a quick check of all these settings in here. And you can even look at, Google integration things here just to make sure that everything is where it needs to be. Now, all of that looks good, right? So we have availability here and all of our settings look good. Then we can move on to the next thing, which is our prompt. The prompt is the biggest thing, right? And so I showed you what it looked like with zero prompt. Booking cadence was perfect, right? Now, a lot of the use cases or a lot of the triage stuff that I do on, calendar availability, and it may just be things like it's not giving the right times, it's not referencing, XYZ date. It can really be one of two things, and it's most likely going to be prompt or your knowledge base. Sometimes people put booking protocols in your knowledge base, and just because it's part of the knowledge base, it gets picked up as context and is fed to the assistant as context to be able to use for their output. So if you have something in your knowledge base, and this could be some old conversations you stored or something like that, where you're like, let's book tomorrow, and that's a common thing, and it keeps saying like, let's book tomorrow, it's probably because it's trying to mimic something that's in the knowledge base, because that's the context it's given. Now, very rare. And if you want to check that, you can go here to the little code tab, and then you can see embedding complete, and you can see the output from your knowledge base here. And so, like, I even had a test right before this one. I may have wiped the conversation, but I had another tag on this contact from the from test before, and it was from a support assistant. And so that one didn't have access to book, and in fact, it had booking triage. And so it was saying, I can't book, but this is why I can't book. And if you're having problems with booking, this is it. It came from the knowledge base. Very rare that that happens, especially if you just have like domain stuff in your knowledge base. But it's mostly going to be the prompt. And I'll show you some examples here. Okay. So I have this crazy prompt that I'll throw in here, and it is way over the top, but it's to kind of show you how instruction sets, especially in your prompt, if you're going in there and you're filling a lot of knowledge that you may think is helpful in context, but actually could be harming the way that the instructions are read by the assistant. So again, we have zero prompt in here other than you're a booking bot, and we see conversational booking is like on point with double messaging on tool calls, like proper time outputs, proper booking, everything's good, right? But if we come in here and we add a crazy prompt in here where we have, this is again over the top, and I may even add a business specific one in here, but if we have instruction sets where the idea is like we're adding all of this like context to be able to inform the assistant, right, of certain things about our business and certain things about things that we do, products that we have, dates and times that we're our different locations are open, and how to book with each location. These things are confusing to AI. AI is smart, but it's not intuitive, right? And even though we try to do a lot of the prompting for you, if there's a very confusing instruction set, it throws it off. I'll show you that here. Okay, I had Claude generate me one of just some examples I had fed it. But how much an instruction set can really differ. So I'm not changing anything else, but just the instruction set. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just delete the conversation. And then what we will do is start it all over again, and we'll do the same thing. We'll do it exactly as we did before. So we said hello. And then we'll go through and try to book an appointment with it. But instructions and prompt tend to be like where majority of these things happen, where, for example, there's a lot in the prompt, right? This prompt is very, very long. It may be confusing to the AI. There's no like cadence or roll to it, and we're trying to control it a bit too much. This kind of a thing is a lot of this is pre-programmed for you. And then, even though you can have protocols and everything, and I mean, you could do whatever you want, but, if we're adding very confusing instructions to the AI, it may cause it to not have a fun time in booking. So let's go ahead and try to do the same thing here, and I'll just copy and paste this, and we'll see what kind of outputs we get. Okay, so a bit different. Let's say right now, and let's see what we're doing on there. And again, sometimes if you have like this recurring thing, it could either come from instruction or knowledge, and you can check the knowledge either in the knowledge base. You can look at the metadata, or you can look here under embed complete, and you'll see that it's given context for something you may have said in the past. Because even on this one, I'm trying to confuse it as much as possible, but it's still kind of wanting to do the same thing. So let's take a time that it's not familiar with. So let's take this here. So it looks like tomorrow at 8. Let's say today at 8. And this is where like contextually the AI is very aware and very smart. Some things that just get in its way sometimes is instructions, or it could be instructions, or it could be knowledge. And then the other thing that I'll kind of cover here too is temperature. So we always put in the temperature for you at 3.5. I even personally on mine keep it at 0.1, 0.2. But if I bring the temperature up to 1, that can also randomize output and things like that. So let's do what about today at 9 p.m. This can come from tool calls. This can come from context injection, instruction, temperature, knowledge. So those are kind of the general things that you want to check on. Because even now, like I'm trying to trick this thing as hard as I can, and it's still not having a fun time. And temperature, prompt, knowledge, check those things, because those are things that kind of feed context and kind of control the way that this thing outputs, because I'm trying my best to kind of show it not doing it, but it's still kind of doing what it should. So prompt is a big thing, right? Event, did the tool get called? And if so, is the metadata correct? So every time a tool is called, right, we get our times and say, just book me the soonest available. So on this one, we got times, right? So if we're coming here and this conversation is going on and it's like, let me book an appointment, and it's giving like times without actually checking the tool call itself, or you don't see these in the conversation. One, go back and check and make sure you have the tools enabled. And two, if we do have this, but we're still getting these weird times, we're just going to make sure that it's pulling the proper times from the calendar, making sure that these are correct. These are actually correct. And then if we go down here to booking, again, I tried to throw this thing off, but it just kind of did its thing. This will be the booking one, and we see appointment successfully booked. But sometimes what you'll see, if it's bad OAuth connection, bad integration, you'll see unauthorized. You'll see the response from GoHighLevel in here, and you can triage it that way, because we're able to get times with no API key. So that's so you don't need an API key to get this, but we do need an API key to book to your calendar. So that's another triage step of refresh. But check these right here. They do give really good metadata on just about everything that you do. You can pretty much in full view see everything associated with it. Even the trace ID from GoHighLevel, you can see all of that in here, and just make sure that all of that is correct. And last is just refreshing connection. If all else fails, our calendar is connected, we have a calendar on our assistant, the ability is there. We've checked our GoHighLevel calendar settings. Everything looks good. Our calendar type is compatible, which I think we should be compatible with just about everyone, but I'll check and confirm on all of that stuff. Our prompt is not super confusing. Again, some people, and it's no fault of anybody's, they put context in there for things about their business, things that they have going on, and the AI could read that as instruction, especially if it's unorganized as a prompt. It'll take that as instruction. Knowledge is another part of that, so I'll kind of group that in with prompt. As knowledge is if you have, booking cadence and things like that. Where knowledge is really powerful is things like domain knowledge about your business, because it's fed as direct context for like an output, right? But if you've put appointment booking protocol in the knowledge base, or like you've given it like a script in the knowledge base, it's going to pull from that script, and it's going to use that as context, which could throw off the output. Knowledge base really at the end of the day should be used for rebuttal objections, FAQs, domain knowledge about the business, pricing information, things that you don't have to put in the prompt, because really all your prompt should be at the end of the day is an identity, style guide rail, response guideline, and then a task-based framework, and that is it. And then the appointment booking should be as simple as like check your times to book the appointment. You see it works perfectly. And then let's see, event. Did the tool actually get called? Go in there and do you see the tool call? Check the metadata associated with it. Again, it'll tell you everything you need to know. If you see things like unauthorized, or you see like no calendar times, go back to the calendar, make sure everything's good, try to refresh it. And that's where kind of this refresh connection comes in. So if all of this is good, we see the event, our calendar is connected ability, our settings are great, our prompt is great, but we see the event and it's like unauthorized, then we need to refresh our OAuth. Or if we see event and then calendar doesn't exist or something like that, then we need to refresh our calendars. That's a deleted calendar. Or maybe even our tools, maybe the tool's not on there, just turn it off, turn it back on like you would an old computer in the 90s, and you should be good to go. But this is booking triage in kind of a nutshell, with an example of, I tried to throw it off, but it kind of happens that way. But even as you saw with like zero prompting, the cadence is like kind of done for you the way that we've set it up. And so appointment booking really should just kind of come down to just letting the assistant know to check its available times and book the appointment. The only other thing I can think of is make sure your time zone is right, but that really kind of comes down to your OAuth integration. But those are the steps there to kind of walk through and test and triage conversational booking. That should get you every bit of context you need to know. It's either going to be one of these things. There's nothing else that it actually could be. And so most likely it's going to be this one, which I'll group knowledge and temperature in there with this one. And then if it's not this one, it's most likely going to be an OAuth connection, either not put on correctly or just needs to be refreshed. So that's calendar booking in a nutshell. I'll put this doc out so that you can go through it and you can use it. I hope that's helpful, and I hope that kind of guides you to where you need to be on triaging some of this stuff with examples of kind of showing like, here's where we're at a baseline, and then you can work back on calendar booking protocol. So hopefully that's helpful.